The Oxford English Dictionary defines music as like noises and sounds and probably. Let's run it back. Each year, we consume 4.8 trillion songs. Each month, tens of thousands of albums are released, and each day, more than 120,000 songs are uploaded to streaming services. Music, music, music. We bloody love it. But what do we, as a people, actually want from it? What is it that satisfies our melodic appetite? What quenches our harmonious thirst? What piques the interest of that audial sweet tooth? Sweet ear? I don't know. And more importantly, do we all want the same thing? Hello, my name is not Alan Freaky, and today I'm going to be asking, what do we want from music? Do we listen for comfort or for identity or both or neither? And how do we differ? I'm only going to make one pretentious video.
It just happens to be the very first.
First off, it's important to ask ourselves, why do we like music? There are a ton of videos on this, so let me just quickly summarise from a scientific perspective. Scientist, by the way. Listening to music brings us pleasure biologically. When we listen to music, blood flows to the limbic system in our brain. This causes the release of dopamine. Dopamine makes us feel good. Are you with me? Not much hope if you're not. Now, interestingly, frequencies and patterns that we recognise release more dopamine than ones that we're not familiar with. When our expectations are fulfilled, we'll like it. It's important to say, though, that we also want some surprise. Repetition and recognition are good to a point, but we don't want to be bored. Surprise within limits, shall we say. And on a really, really simple level, there's the science. Now, from an anthropological perspective, anthropologists, by the way, Homo sapiens have been playing music for at least 90,000 years. Bone flutes keep turning up and nobody knows, or I'm not sure if they care, which ones were actually made for music. But we can all agree that some of them were. Probably. The dopamine music releases is important for our species' survival. It makes us want to carry on living. It makes us want to have sex. Music equals dopamine. Dopamine equals better survival and make little us's. It can also be argued that understanding music / noises and sounds and shit and developing our ear for it could help us with survival further, because back in day, we'd need to listen for animals to either run towards or run away from. I live quite a sheltered life. There's also always been a communal aspect to music, most likely tied to the dopamine thingy. It brings communities together, ritually uniting them, making them happier and by extension, stronger. So ultimately, we've likely evolved in a way where noises and sounds and shit are important and give us both biological and social advantages, so music is important. Put super simply, this is why we have a deep connection to music. These are the reasons why it has significance to us. But what I'm more interested in knowing is, why do we like particular types of music? Yeah, why don't we all have the same musical tastes? You know as well as I do that one man's Beatles is another man's 100 Gex. We like different music, we have different expectations from music, we want different things from music. That could be the answer to the title. We start developing our original tastes pretty goddamn early. Now these original / natural / base tastes, whatever you want to call them, come from many different places. Our environment, what we grew up with, who we grew up with, our social relationships, our culture, our experience, other stuff. Remember when I talked about music we're more familiar with releasing more dopamine, literally 2 minutes ago? Well, This means that we're more likely to enjoy music that follows the same patterns to what we're familiar with, has the same tones, belongs to the same genre. Hence why we often see people who like Denzel Curry, Jid, and Joey Badass. We see people who like Pussycat Dolls, Atomic Kitten, and Christina Aguilera. And we see people who like Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, and Miles Davis. But it's rarer to find someone whose Spotify Wrapped consists of Denzel Curry, Atomic Kitten, and Miles Davis. Yeah? Pop music is often the most straightforward genre for us to like, using the same chords, progressions. It borrows heavily from other genres, often the most appealing and palatable elements. And it's also the one that we're surrounded by the most, hence why it's so popular. Although, caveat, the best pop music does also utilise this surprise within limits approach, the mundane pop music tends to lack this. But pop isn't the only genre people listen to. Some people may be more comfortable with the storytelling of folk, that's how they like to be entertained. Some people want to work out how they're meant to be feeling themselves, choose your own adventure style. They like the dissonant sounds of jazz which forego the common chords that we've been taught have certain feelings assigned to them. These are ways that different individuals have developed to consume. Now, this may come from how they consume other media. It may come from what type of learner they are. It may be about their perception of themselves and who they are or how they want to be perceived. We obviously aren't stuck with our first tastes, otherwise we'd all be listening to Humpty Dumpty still, but that being said, we often do tend to set our main preferences pretty early in our lives. By the time we're in our late teens, people normally have an outline of what their musical tastes will be like for the rest of their lives. There are, of course, exceptions. I don't need to hear about how your granny turned into a Slipknot mega fan when she was in her early 80s. I do see liking other genres, especially strange genres, as a muscle that can be trained. Like how nobody liked their first pint of lager when they were 12, but by the time you're 15, you can't get enough of the stuff. This muscle training can happen over time through natural exposure or through actively seeking new music out. Although we don't listen to as much new music that we don't like anymore because of the changing nature of our consumption, the autonomy of streaming over radio, this would potentially give us less natural exposure. But that's a question for a different day. The question here is if the surprise within limits and the perceived comfort that this brings is what we want biologically. Why do some people want to train themselves to like any music, any genre that they're not immediately comfortable with? Why would they push themselves out of their comfort zone? And this is a question of identity. It's less about the different types of music and more about the different types of people. I was going to talk about active versus passive listening. I still might. But the more I think about it, the less I think it's actually a thing. We all listen to music passively most of the time, unless you're Anthony fucking Fantano. I quite like Anthony Fantano. Let's actually start to answer the question instead. I'm sure you'll agree that deserves a like and or subscribe. That feels weird saying. So if comfort and dopamine explain why almost everyone likes music that vaguely fits patterns they're comfortable with, what is it that pushes some people to go deeper than this? For me, when thinking about this, I've split us all up into 4 different groups because we all love being put in boxes. First up, music utilizers. They get what they're given, usually pop. Music just fills silences, there's barely any real engagement. They make up half the population. Next, we have music likers. They engage with music, but don't really push it further than this. They live within their own musical limits, usually set when they're younger. They don't chase a wide range of releases, but they still consume and engage with certain music a lot of the time. Roughly 40% of our population. Third group, music lovers. These people are weird. Music's one of their first topics of conversation. They wear their eclectic taste as a badge of honour, check release radar every Friday, collect vinyl to prove a point. They make up 6% of the population. Finally, we have people with music anhedonia, which affects 3 to 5% of the population. These people just don't really like music. For our first group, the music utilizers, it's almost all dopamine and brain shit. They use music to fill the silence and basically gain something from it when the alternative is said silence that wouldn't give them anything. For music like us, it's still mostly the brain shit, dopamine patterns, comfort. They rarely push themselves outside of this comfort zone and listen to music they haven't already warmed to. And to be clear, that's absolutely fine. This isn't a hierarchical thing. If this is you, me saying you like music doesn't mean you don't love some of it, but you love specific artists or genres more than music as a concept itself. There's still identity here, but it's more built around separating themselves from what they don't like rather than including themselves in a larger structure. These two groups stick more closely to dopamine hits through familiar patterns. These groups wouldn't have pushed themselves to listen to fucking crocodile noises if they lived in Europe and only had to worry about bears. And I think in that context, this is in a sense the most healthy and normal way to consume music. Surprise within limits. But what about our next group? For music lovers, it's so much about identity and building relationships with more songs, more artists, more genres and subcultures. It's more social than biological. It's identity over comfort. The identity part splits two ways in my mind. First, there's an inclusion identity. These people have a desire to listen to more music as wide a range as possible, going out of their way to do this. On the one hand, because there's something innately beautiful in music. There's no such thing as a bad genre, only different ways of expression, and to be able to understand them all is a worthy goal on the road to bettering yourself. On the other hand, we just think that music person is an acceptable rule in a social group, and knowing about music makes us better than other people. Who's that ridiculous? Fair. This inclusion identity pushes these people to listen to more genres to expand horizons, but the other side, and the one that music like us often share, is the exclusion identity. It's softer and sometimes for music lovers more fleeting, but it's there. As these groups form their music tastes, they may distance themselves from pop music because the masses, potentially the music utilizers or other groups they don't want to identify with, like it, and these people want to be different. I've done this twice in my life, both times when I was younger. When I was in school, I distanced myself from Arctic Monkeys because too many people had their merch in school bag form. A few years later, when I was really developing my tastes, I distanced myself from Kendrick Lamar, Drake and J. Cole because they seemed to be the only rappers people listened to in a world that I'd recently found out contained Childish Gambino, None, Mick Jenkins, artists I wanted to get more recognition, and this ended up pushing me more away from the first three artists I mentioned. I did get over myself in the end. I think the difference is my music lovers usually soften over time. They get more secure and start seeing the grand overlap because all they now love and what they used to reject, as I did. Music likers are less likely to do this because they stay within their comfort zone and see less of the overlap of inspiration, see less of where the artists they like were inspired by. That said, this exclusion identity definitely still sticks around to some degree, even for music lovers. I'm not sure if I'll ever let myself like a Chris Brown song. It's still about more than music, it's about identity. Ultimately, music lovers stick with the surprises that go outside of the limits, building that inclusion identity, and soon the surprises stop being so surprising. The things that were surprising become the new boundaries of their comfort zone. their muscles are fully flexed. Oh yeah, and there was a fourth group, wasn't there? For music anhedoniacs, get out. Talk to your therapist. We're not dealing with you here. So what do we want from music? Biologically, we want that dopamine rush. We want something that complements our mood and our personal way of consumption. This is enough for a lot, almost certainly most people. However, a sizable minority want more. We want something that we can build ourselves with and tie our identities to, simultaneously making us feel like part of something bigger and making us feel different from, better than, others. I'm not saying that this comfort versus identity aspect is all we care about, and most of this is happening unconsciously, of course, but the bigger picture is that when we put on a new song, the opening notes are only the tip of an iceberg that's more concerned with biological patterns, familiarity, preset judgments, and social structures than simply a beat and any accompanying lyrics. It's way more than noises and sounds and shit. Thank you for watching. I don't know how this algorithm stuff works, but I hear liking and subscribing helps, and I would truly appreciate that. What do you think? Have I completely missed the mark? Does music just sound nice? Am I overanalyzing? Yes, I am. But those questions are what the comment section's for, apparently. We're planning on making more of these, so hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Stay cool. Never stop stopping.